Alright guys, welcome to Vintage Genetics, where it's all about classic bodybuilding. And as we all know, it's a tragic news all over the world with the coronavirus right now. So a lot of people are forced to stay at home because all the gyms are closed, including here in the Netherlands. Now we are very fortunate to have our own gym. It is closed to the public, but because it's our own gym, we are able to train here. So right now we're going to do a back workout, but I will also be recording some home workout routines you can do without the use of a gym. So let's first get started with the Lat Pulldown and a very special variation of it on the ground.
Alright, so this first exercise is indeed a variation on the regular Lat Pulldown. I'm doing it on the ground right here because then I can feel it much better in my lower lats. Kind of depends on the height of your body. So the taller you are, usually it's more difficult to feel it really in the lats and the lower back when doing a lat pull down, just sitting on the seat that is standard on such a machine. So when you sit back a little bit more, it's easier to have that bar going in front of the body without having to angle your upper body backwards, without having to lean back, and then it's much easier to go straight down and feel it in the lower lats. You can literally see it right here. If you look at the bar, it goes pretty much straight down. But if you look at my elbows and my arms in general, at the first half of the rep, they go straight down. But as I get lower and lower, my arms start to shift downwards as well, start to go into a different angle, and that targets the lower lats. Just kind of compare it to a cable pullover or a pullover in general. The bottom part, the bottom motion of this rep, that is targeting the lower lats. So you should really try it out to make sure that you feel that mind-muscle connection there, because if you don't have the connection in the lower lats in general, then this is a great way to establish a connection like this. You do have to keep in mind that you cannot do a heavy weight compared to what you used to do. So when I do the stack here, normally it's not as heavy, but now it's very heavy. And that, in my opinion, is what bodybuilding is all about. Challenging the muscles as much as possible with a certain weight. So if you're able to do a whole lot of weight and you still have a weak muscle group when you train that muscle and you still are able to do a lot of weight, that means you have become efficient in moving the weight from A to B, but not really efficient in using the muscle to move the weight that you're training. Now this exercise is one of the examples that I like to give that really changes a lat pull down, comparing just going as heavy as possible to actually making it a bodybuilding exercise, really making it a more difficult exercise and targeting the muscles even more at the same time. And I just did my heaviest set, and now I'm doing another set which I like to call the back off set, which means I go about 20% lighter, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, but I go lighter and I improve my form. And usually because you go lighter, you're more able to get into that mind-muscle connection and make it a true bodybuilding exercise, combining progressive overload from all the sets you did before, going from a light weight to a heaviest weight to failure, and then the last set to make sure you actually get into the muscle is a little lighter with a better form, better contraction, better stretch, etc. And this one is the one I'm doing right after that exercise I just did. So right now the lats in general and the lower lats are pretty pumped up. And yes, the handles are from Tryon, a pretty amazing brand from Spain. We got all the handles for that in this gym. And I'm also going to do a V-bar pull down with one of those handles. And I really love to do this on the seat because here I do want to lay my body backwards, as it's a more natural way to move the weight. And it kind of is a combination, and I always say this, of a pull down and a row, because if your upper body stays entirely straight without moving it, it really is a pull down. But if you lean back a little bit, it kind of looks like a row. So it not only works the lat width for that V taper when you stretch up, but also works the back thickness when you go downwards to contract the back. And that is what I need to work on personally. The width is there, especially from the front. Obviously, you can never be wide enough, but compared to the back thickness, the width is there, and I need to work more on the back thickness. So that's why I always like to do usually only one particular pull down exercise for the lat width, and most of the other exercises are all dedicated to work the back thickness. And this was my last set with a V-bar pull down. With that one, because I have a great mind muscle connection, I usually don't do a back off set. And now we're moving to a pure rowing exercise, the double handle seated row. And trust me, it is very different from the regular seated row with just a handle in the middle with both hands holding it. This one is very different. First of all, not everybody is able to do this because it requires 2 cables running down to the weight. And you can see that is the case here. So I can use 2 handles unilaterally, so you can even use it to fix imbalances in the back. If you have a weaker left back, for example, you can work on it by doing exercises like this. But at the same time, it's a much more difficult exercise to do compared to a regular seated row, because first of all, I said it's unilateral, but also because it's not converging but diverging as you go back. You can see the handles go outwards, and to me that makes the exercise a little bit more difficult because other muscles are then involved, and you cannot rely on using momentum at all in this exercise, in my opinion, because you really want to focus on contracting and retracting those shoulder blades and making sure those rhomboids are working and those muscles are being worked in this exercise. Next up is the wide grip T-bar row, and we made a pretty construction to make it work. If you go too heavy and you have no one to spot you at the back, the barbell may actually shoot out, and that happened in the past with me in another gym. So you always want to have someone standing on the barbell or have a construction like this to keep you safe. And yes, it's a wide grip T-bar row. Not a regular close grip one. That makes it more difficult as well, but the wide grip works the back thickness. And the wide grip is also from ATX. A lot of incredible equipment we got there from the ATX brand. Also the belt squat machine, which I like to use for pretty much every muscle group. But here I'm doing a pretty heavy weight already. And if you look at my shoulder blades, especially in the next set you will see, you will also see them contracting and retracting, because if you're not able to do that, the weight is simply too heavy. And I have to say, this weight felt pretty heavy either way, but you have to train the back heavy to make it grow. And this is my girlfriend doing some cable pullovers, and if you may or may not know, she is pregnant for in between 17 and 18 weeks right now, so that's pretty incredible, and an example that you can still train even when you're pregnant and even when the coronavirus is in the world right now. But anyway, this is my heaviest set on the wide grip T-bar row, wearing a belt to protect the lower back and really only doing quality reps. I noticed that if I kept doing reps on this one, it will be sloppy form and the lower back would be impacted. So what I decided to do is lower the weight a little bit and really do a back off set again, such as I did at the beginning of the workout, to focus on pulling the shoulder blades together. Here you can see it really clearly, to make sure that I contract the right muscles and not just moving the weight from point A to point B.
That's the sets.
And by the way, I am wearing one of the 4 new Vintage Genetics fitted shirts. This color is the desert color, and there are 3 other colors, and most of them are back in stock, and right now 20% off. So if you watch this video when it comes out, it still will be 20% off, so make sure to check it out on vintagegenetics.com. And this will be the last back exercise, the cable pullovers. Some people actually like to do the cable pullovers before any other exercise because it allows you to isolate the back without using the biceps, and it allows you to get blood in there before doing any other heavy exercises, and it makes it easier to be aware and to be conscious of the back muscles when doing back exercises. But because I have been doing, workouts like this for many years, it's not necessary for me. I see it as a finishing exercise to really, just like chest flies after doing a chest workout, I do pullovers after a back workout to eke out every single ounce of energy after already having done all those other back exercises. So this isolates the back, so it's not the biceps working, it's not the rear delts working, it's just the back. And this was the final set of the cable pullovers, and honestly, I like to stick to about 15 reps on them. If you go too heavy, it will simply be too heavy for you to isolate the back. You will, no matter what, use other muscles to aid you. So just use a lighter weight with more volume to make sure the back is finished before moving on to the biceps. And the first bicep exercise that I'm going to do is the preacher barbell curl. This is one famous Arnold exercise from back in the day, and we all know how big his biceps were, so stick to the basics if you want to have those classic big muscles which everybody wants. Big arms, big chest, big back, it's all the basic exercise that were already available 50 years ago, you can still do today. No need for fancy machines or weird exercises. Stick to the basics and at least your biceps, in this example, will grow. This is pretty much what I've been doing all of my life when bodybuilding, sticking to the basic curls. Obviously, every once in a while you do different exercises, try out how they feel, but mostly I like to stick to these. And one of the favorite ones is this preacher curl. You can do this either with an easy curl bar or a straight bar, which we're using right here. And the straight bar is automatically a little bit heavier because the bar weighs a bit more, but also because the wrists are in a different position, the bicep is more easily contractable at the very top. So again, if you have trouble with mind-muscle connection, using a straight bar will be easier to use to get a peak contraction at the top. You also don't want to go too heavy, and you also don't want to overextend the biceps at the bottom, because that's when you get injured. The biceps are a very small muscle compared to the back, for example. So don't overstress them, don't overdo it. Make sure to pump them up. Make sure to warm them up properly, which is why doing biceps after the back is a great idea, because you automatically warm them up already. And here you can see I stick to about 8 to 9 reps as the last set of this exercise. Some people like to go around 4 to 5 reps for biceps, which is way too heavy, and that is impossible then to feel the biceps contract and stretch, which is what bodybuilding is all about. And then this exercise might seem a little strange, especially compared to the exercise I just did. It's the exact same bar, the exact same preacher bench, but now my grip is much wider. If you guys listen to my videos in the past, you know that a close grip barbell curl hits the outer bicep peak, because your biceps has 2 muscles on top, one on the outside and one on the inside, and if you target the one on the outside, that's when you get the bicep peak the most. So that's why I mostly like to stick to close grip bicep curls. But if you do a wide grip one, you hit that inner bicep, and trust me, that feels amazing if you know how to contract those biceps at the top. And at the same time, you're not able to do a whole lot of weight at all, because it's a very inefficient movement. But again, bodybuilding is about challenging the muscle as much as possible with the least weight as possible to make sure you never get injured, but at the same time make sure those muscles get the signal for hypertrophy, aka muscle growth. So trust me, try this one out. You will feel the contraction you've never felt before. And then the last bicep exercise, the concentration curl. I love to do this one at the end because with this exercise, for me personally, I can very easily still achieve a contraction. If you have a good pump in a muscle part, a muscle group, such as the chest or the back, it's for most people very difficult at the third, fourth, or even fifth exercise to still truly feel the muscle, to really get a good contraction. Sometimes it's just tired and fatigued, and you don't really know what you're doing, just moving the weight. But in my opinion, even at the very last exercise, you should still be able to feel the muscle work. And that is what's happening when you're doing the concentration curl correctly. I also have a tutorial on my channel about how to do the concentration curl correctly. Here I'm doing the seated version. You also have the standing version. The standing version is a little bit more difficult because that requires you to know what to feel. You should really know when and what to feel when doing the bicep curl. But when you're sitting, you can simply put your arm on your leg and put it in an angle so that when you go up, you automatically contract the bicep optimally. And that's what this exercise is about. You can visually also see it. If you look at your bicep, when you're going all the way up, you see the change in the bicep contracting. And when you then go down slowly and controlled, you can literally see the bicep fibers move, because as we all know, on the negative rep, on the negative portion of the rep, that's when you damage the muscle the most. So that's not what you want to skip, as some people like to do. They simply go to the positive contraction and then drop the weight to only repeat the same action. But for me, going down slowly is one of the main keys of muscle growth. So what I'm doing here is a benefit of doing an exercise with one arm. You can use your other arm to help a few reps to actually go beyond failure without having to use a spotter. Now, this was the complete back and bicep workout, and I will be posting some home workouts as well for you guys. Already a tip: if you have some resistant bands, if you don't already, you should try to get them, because with those you can do a whole lot of exercises, and we don't know for how long the gyms will be closed. Anyway guys, I want to thank you for watching, and don't forget to stay golden.